Hey ladies, got a struggle? Need to vent? It's time to join your voice and get down to business with some critical thought, where like-minded ladies share their personal experiences to empower each other, using critical thinking to make wise decisions. And now, here's your host, Lady C.
Hi, this is Lady C, and welcome to another episode of The Struggles of Jehovah's Witness Women. My upcoming guest has a very interesting story to tell in the sense that she has recently left the Watchtower Society, and she has a whole lot of information that she'd like to share with our listening audience about her experience in going to college and trying to be a pioneer in the organization for 8 years. She was also trying to go to school for kingdom evangelizers, and she's going to get into these topics and help different ones understand what that's all about, as well as talk about the things that she felt that her mother did not do for her growing up as a youngster. So I'd like to welcome Demira. Demira, thank you so much for being on the program.
Thank you, Lady C. I'm glad to be here.
And I'm so happy that you're willing to tell your story. So first of all, let's just kind of talk about your life as a Jehovah's Witness. How did you and your family come to belong to this group?
My mother and I started to study with the Jehovah's Witnesses when I was a preteen, and she started her study through someone that she worked with. She was very impressed with her dress and her manners and her conduct, and she offered her a Bible study one day in informal witnessing at the laundromat, and my mother accepted it, and we started studying from there.
Okay, so it's just you and your mother that became Jehovah's Witnesses?
Yes.
And then basically, what was your life like before you became a Jehovah's Witness?
Before we were Jehovah's Witnesses, it was my mom and I still. She was a single parent up until very recently. And we were Baptist, Methodist, or some weird mix of the two. We were in the South, so a little bit of both there. But we were religious people. We went to church, and she tried to teach me right and wrong and manners and respect and, the normal things that church-going people teach their children, but not a whole lot more than that. Not a whole lot more than right and wrong, do this and do that because I said so or because that's what God likes, and that was it. It was a happy childhood. I was well provided for physically, but mentally and emotionally sorely lacking.
But now let me ask you this. Being a person that's a preteen, when you're saying preteen, you're like what? How old would you say you were?
11, 12.
Okay. So that means that when you had gone to school and you were able to participate in birthday parties and Christmas and saluting the flag, how did your life change in school after you all became one of Jehovah's Witnesses?
Yes, that's true. For some years in school, I was able to do those things. And then around about 6th grade, all these changes started happening where I wasn't saluting the flag and I wasn't doing birthdays. But I couldn't really explain it other than, well, I'm a Jehovah's Witness now, and we don't do that. Like I was a kid, and so no one had sat me down and explained to me, this is the reason why it's important that you don't do this or that. It's just, we just don't do that. And my mother hadn't taken the time to make sure that I could explain to my kids at school or teachers at school why I'm not doing it. And so I just, I would just find a way not to do it without having to reason on why I wouldn't do it. I just find a way not to do it.
What was the biggest contrast? Because, a lot of times kids can be cruel. So did you find that the kids were more cruel after you became a witness than they were before you were a witness?
I don't know that they treated me a whole lot differently, but they definitely looked at me a lot different. They thought I was weird because I just, all of a sudden, just last year before the summer, you did these things. And now this year, because you're Jehovah's Witness, you don't want to do. It's just, that wasn't enough of a reason for them. And they didn't know what a Jehovah's Witness was. And I didn't have enough to explain to them what it actually was and why it meant we didn't do certain things. So although they weren't cruel to me, they did look at me like, you're just so weird. It's so weird that you changed like this over the summer.
Did your friends keep hanging around you?
Some did. And then once we got into middle school, because that was 6th grade, and where I went to school, 6th grade is the end of elementary school. You go to 7th and 8th in middle school. And then once we got to middle school, they kind of didn't hang out with me as much. I had to make new friends at that point.
So would you say it was difficult for you?
Making friends wasn't that difficult for me, but it was because a lot of times I kind of hid who I was. I didn't mention the whole Jehovah's Witness thing to people unless it absolutely had to be mentioned. Like it had to be, if it absolutely had to come up, then I would say something about it, but I wouldn't go into detail. So making friends to me wasn't a hard thing to do, but I kept the whole Jehovah's Witness thing under wraps.
Okay. I think a lot of kids did that because you don't want to be ostracized. I mean, that's just really sad that, your religion makes you stand out so much that you go into an arena where people are already cruel because, kids can just be cruel without religion involved, and now you're here with this weird religion, and so now you're not only, having to be dealing with kids who are just cruel by nature because, kids like to play practical jokes. They like to make people the butt of their jokes. They like to make people stand out. And if anybody who looks different or acts different, you're the one that they poke fun at, So, and that's why a lot of young kids don't want to be dealing with that,
Right. That's where double lives come in because they want to do what everybody around them is doing. They don't want to be different.
Right. So then as time goes on, you're going to the Kingdom Hall, you're listening to the talks from the platform. Does your mother reinforce the information that you're getting from the Kingdom Hall, or is the information that you're getting from the platform, is that just doing all the brainwashing there for you?
Yeah, that's about it. That's about all I got. We didn't have a family study. We didn't have my personal study together. We didn't have any of those things. So what I heard at the Kingdom Hall was about it, or sometimes I spent a lot of times with some of the kids in the congregation and their families, and so we might do a little family study in their house. But at my house, there was no reinforcement of anything at the Kingdom Hall and no personal study, no family work, none of that happened at my house. I did do a lot of reading, though. I did read the books and the magazines. I read those. I was so excited to read those, but that's all the reinforcement I got.
Did your mother pioneer or anything?
No, she didn't. She was a hard-working single mom, so she didn't have a lot of time. She did work full-time, and she worked nights, but no, she didn't pioneer.
And how serious did she take the religion? Because, you said she found out about this religion on her job, and was she really gung-ho at this religion? Can you really look back and say that she was?
I think that she was about average. I don't think she was, gung-ho, this is the way it should be, this is a great life. I think that she probably thought those things, but she didn't preach it. Maybe we go out in service a couple of Saturdays a month or something like that. But I don't necessarily know if I would describe her as gung-ho. She was, to me, I would consider her an average publisher. And then, of course, when she married her husband later on down the road, he's an elder, and so things changed a little bit after that. But up until then, no, I think average is the best way.
As you began to, progress through high school, what were you encouraged to do? What type of decisions were you thinking about making at that time when you were approaching graduating from high school?
So I was considering two things. One thing I was considering was, do I go to school? Okay, now, just so you know, the area that I lived in, there was no school to go to. If you were going to go to college of any kind, you were going to have to leave that area to go to college. There was no college at the time that I lived there. Now, my decisions were, am I going to go to school, leave home, go to school, and try to do something in a certain career, or am I going to stay here and just pioneer? Because to me, those were the only two options I had. Now I know that there were several other options, but at the time, in my mind, those were the two options I had. Go to school, get a job, stay home, pioneer.
So what did you decide to do?
And so I decided that I would go to school. So I left for school. I graduated, and the same year I graduated, I started college about 2.5 hours away from home. So I moved 2.5 hours away to go to school, and I did go to school, and I enjoyed it very much, and I'm glad that I did because the outcome has been very good.
When you made the decision to go to college, how did your mother feel about that?
She did not feel pro or against it, I don't think. I don't remember any reaction from her that she said, oh, that's great, or that she said, oh, no. She was completely, poker-faced about it, as far as I can remember. These are the conversations my mom and I did not have. She did not have a conversation with me about what I wanted to do with my future, how I made the decision to go to live somewhere else to go to school, who I was going to live with, any of that. We didn't have any of those conversations until I had already made the preparations to do it. I drove up there and got the arrangements for financial aid. I went and looked at the schools. All those things I did by myself because she just had no part of it at all.
Well, somebody had to have told you about going to school and coaching and mentoring you to do that. Did you have anybody outside of the home that was helping you out?
Well, my father's always been real big on education, and the area we lived in, he said, you're not going to get a really decent job in this area without some kind of college. You're going to have to do something. So my father has always been really big in get some kind of education to support yourself. And also my guidance counselors at school, because I did very well in school. And my guidance counselors at school said, you can make this a great career somehow. You do well in school. You're well liked in this area. You can do something with that. And of course, it helped that I was able to get some scholarships and grants. And once I knew I was approved for those, then there was no reason that I wasn't going to go.
Okay. So your father's not a Jehovah's Witness, I take it?
Right.
Okay, but your stepfather's an elder.
Yes.
So then it was really good that you had somebody in your life that could give you some guidance, because that's the problem that most Jehovah's Witnesses have. Because, every year when it's time for the district convention, they always make sure they have those talks on the assembly programs, the convention programs, so that they can tell people what to do. And they're trying to encourage them to go into the pioneer work. So it is good that you had somebody outside of your family that's not a witness that could actually help you to make those decisions, So when you made the arrangements to go move to the area where you went to college, did you live by yourself?
I did not live by myself. I had a roommate. Her name was Sharice, and Sharice and I lived together. She was someone that I went to high school with, and her parents and my parents knew each other. My mom was really impressed with Sharice's parents. They were really nice Christian people, and Sharice was a nice person. And so my mother, I don't think she was exactly happy about me moving away to go to college, but because she knew the person I'd be living with and she knew their parents, I think she was much more comfortable with that whole situation than if I had just gone to like a school and had someone assigned to me who I would live with.
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't.
Can you tell me something about your college experience? Did any of your professors say anything to you that left a lasting impression on you or anything like that?
My college experience was great. I went right away. I stayed in my studies. I kind of knew exactly what I wanted to do, and so I focused on that. And I did well in college, just like I did well in high school. I learned a lot of how to deal with people of different backgrounds. I learned a lot about balancing my time. That was major, making sure that I balanced my time because I was working while I was in school too. So I was working and in school. I had to balance my time well, and I, of course, was still going to the meetings, just trying to just stay focused and balanced. But I learned a lot of how to do that just from my college experience. I did have one particular professor, actually two particular professors who took real interest in me because they saw that for at least one semester, there was something that we got to in my courses that I just couldn't quite figure it out. I just couldn't get it. So they would have me over to their house, or they would stay after classes with me or come in early to help me out. But another thing they did that I felt like was so important is that they taught me, if you don't understand, speak up. And if you don't get it, look it up. And you just keep digging until you find exactly what you're looking for. So, of course, later on in this process, and that is something that was helpful. But I remember them because they took such an interest in just making sure that I succeeded at what I was doing. They keep in touch with me to this day, and they constantly have just good advice. And the main thing I appreciate is how they taught me to stand on my own 2 feet, to think for myself, and to be able to just do enough looking up and digging until I find what it is that I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm. So they're giving you more of an experience in life without somebody just telling you what to say and what to do, but they're trying to teach you how to fish or how to swim.
Right.
What did you go to school for?
I went for opticianry.
Okay.
I kind of got the advice of this particular field from someone in the congregation who suggested, why don't you try this? Because that is what his son did, and that's what he did, and his son had served at Bethel. And so he suggested, well, why don't you try this? And when I looked into it, it just seemed like such a cool job. I was like, yeah, I think I would like that. And, of course, because he recommended it, this was a 2-year program. So I chose to do that, one, because of his recommendation, but two, because this was a 2-year program, not a 4-year degree. So I wouldn't have the expense. I wouldn't have the extra expense of 4-year college. And because, of course, the whole stigma behind university and 4-year college and all that, it was nice that I could get something that seemed really interesting, paid pretty well, and only had to do it for 2 years.
And then you're also going at the angle of getting a trade.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, something that I can always take with me. That's true.
Yeah, I'm just saying the witnesses always teach you to go to a trade school, so they don't want you to go to a 4-year degree.
Right. And that was the reason why he recommended that too. You know, it wasn't 4 years. It was something practical that a lot of witnesses did.
When you graduated from college, what did you do with your life?
After I graduated, I went straight into my field.
Doing what?
Okay, so when I graduated from college, I went into a job in a field called opticianry, where this is mainly, an optician is the person who fills the glasses prescription that an optometrist or an ophthalmologist writes. I make eyeglasses and fill prescriptions for contact lenses, which means that you can get a job in a factory actually making contact lenses or making eyeglasses. You can do it full-time or part-time.
Okay, cool. So that sounds like a really interesting job then.
It's fun. I love it.
Do you have to work on a quota, or do you have to, make so many eyeglasses or contact lenses a day, a week, or whatever?
We stay pretty busy, but we do not have a quota. We make glasses for not just the company we work for, but we make glasses for companies from all over the area. So we stay very busy, but we do not have an exact quota. However, if you make a certain amount by a certain part of the week or month, then there are bonuses in it for you, but those things are not required. It's just extra that your companies offer.
Okay. Now, see, that's something new for me, because I've heard of an optometrist, but I never really did any research on what an optician would do. Mm-hmm. So I'm just saying that because somebody else may be sitting out here listening to this interview, and they might want to do that. But they may not have the money to go to a 4-year degree, but they might be willing to do what you did.
Okay.
So that's an option. I'm not saying that you should go to a 4-year degree. Maybe you don't want to do 4 years. Maybe you want to do 2 years. Maybe you want to just do enough to get you a decent paying job. Because, I always tell people that even though I will tell individuals to go to college and check it out, I also realize that college is not for everybody. Just like we were, when we grew up in this religion, they forced Watchtower down our throat. I don't want to sit here and force college down anybody's throat either. But I just feel like, if you do have the skills and you are smart enough to survive in that environment, go for it, So then what did you do after you got your job in the organization? Did you do anything else besides just work your job?
I did. Not long after that, I started pioneering. So I worked part-time. I was able to find a part-time job where I was doing that, making glasses and contacts, and I was able to pioneer along with that.
What's the difference between you going to this 2-year college, pioneering, and somebody pioneering right out of high school? What advantage did you have?
The advantage, I feel like, is just the whole life experience, a life experience that you're not going to get when you come straight out of high school and into pioneering. I feel like that someone who takes some kind of college, whether it's 4 or 2 years, I feel like that they are more equipped for what pioneering actually requires of them. So that is, again, making sure that you manage your time well. I learned my time management skills from college. I wasn't that great at managing my time in high school, but I didn't have as many things going on. But when I got to college, I really had to make sure that my time was managed the best way possible. And when I started to pioneer, that really helped. That's one thing that really helped. I also feel like the life experience as far as dealing with people from all different backgrounds Because in college, you have adults who are coming back to school. You have people who are just coming out of high school. You have people who are coming back to college again. So you learn a lot from other people. So when you start pioneering, you're going to be pioneering with people who've been pioneering for a long time, people who are new pioneers, people who need a little help, who want to work with you because they need help. It's so good to be able to have that experience beforehand than being thrown into it. Because remember, you have to pioneer for a year before you go to pioneer school. So you literally, if you come out of high school and go straight into pioneering, you are literally being thrown to just whatever the situation is that presents itself from that point without, in my opinion, without any real life preparation. You have your Bible and your Watchtower and your CD-ROM, but you don't have any life experience to add to that. And I feel like you will definitely lose your joy so quick without it.
So that's good then, because once you get out there pioneering, you kind of like get tunnel vision and you never look back up to do anything else because that's all you're going to be doing for the rest of your life, or that's what some people do anyway. Is there any other advantages to going to college instead of going straight to pioneering?
I also feel like that it qualifies you to have better opportunities for employment too. I feel like that if you have some college, or if you have college, period, I feel like it's definitely going to ensure that you get a better career or better job, better pay, better benefits, and more respect. And you can choose part-time. If you really want to pioneer, you can choose part-time, and you have more part-time options with benefits and better pay if you have college under your belt, as opposed to someone coming right out of high school with no college, no experience, no work experience, no internship, and now they want to work part-time so they can pioneer and they want to have benefits, but you're not qualified for anything. College qualifies you for lots of other options, better options.
So you felt like you were really equipped for that then, for life?
I did. I felt like I was ready.
Now, so you go to college, you come out, you get a job, you begin pioneering. What was the deciding factor for you to start pioneering? Why did you want to do that?
There were 2 times in my life that I felt like I could really be doing more for Jehovah. And one of those times was just before I started pioneering. I was in a congregation at this time. This time, of course, I moved away from where I grew up. So I'm in a different atmosphere. But I'm in a congregation of young people who are pioneers and a couple of not so young people who were maybe 10, 20 years older than me, who still weren't older, but they were older than us. And they pioneered, and they just seemed like they were so happy, and they loved it so much. And there's always this constant talk of do more, can you pioneer? It seems like every year, every assembly, there's some part that asks, can you pioneer? Can you do more? Can you arrange your circuit? So I kind of fell into that. I did. I fell into, well, I could do more. I could rearrange my schedule. I could pioneer. And, of course, the older friends there were saying the same thing. You know, you're in service so much. Why aren't you pioneering? Why aren't you pioneering? And so it was peer pressure. I feel like it was peer pressure. A lot of it was. And then some of it was just me saying I can figure out a way to do more. I just felt like that's what I had to do.
Mhm. Well, then you did say that there were people your age there that you could relate to. So did you feel like pioneering made you closer to them or made you more acceptable to the group?
It did. And we spent a lot more time together. And most of the time as pioneers, you get invited to more things and you're just in circles more often than you would be if you're not. So you do get included a lot more. And so, yeah, I did make some somewhat decent friendships at that time because of that, too.
And what are some of the other things that when you started pioneering that you got involved in? You mentioned that you were trying to reach out for even more privileges of service. You want to explain about that?
So the second time in my life that I felt like I could be doing more for Jehovah was when I decided to apply for the School for Kingdom Evangelizers, or SKE. And what that is it's a school that the organization provides for young single people who want to volunteer to be trained to serve where the need is great. So it's open to single brothers and sisters, but it's also open to married couples too. There could be a mix there. But the purpose of it is to send these applicants out for 2 months to a location, a school, where they're taught to be pretty much missionaries. So you have to be agreeable to go wherever you are assigned at the end of this 2-month school. And so that could include another state or another country.
Now, for my listening audience that does not know what serving where the need is great is, can you kind of expound on that a little bit?
Serving where the need is great is a term that's used for someone of Jehovah's Witness who goes to a place where there are not very many Jehovah's Witnesses in comparison to the population in that area. So there are lots more people than there are Jehovah's Witnesses to preach to the people. Or it could be a remote land, a place that is far away where just Jehovah's Witnesses don't get to go very often to preach to the native people there. Okay. And so there is a larger need for Jehovah's Witnesses to focus their attention in certain places because of those circumstances.
This school for kingdom evangelizers, how long has this been in operation in the Jehovah's Witness faith?
It has been about 3 to 4 years that it's been available now to single sisters. Now, it's something, as far as I know, it's something that's always been available to single brothers. There's always been some type of an arrangement for single brothers who want to do more, or what they call reach out. But for single sisters, we didn't have as many options. We didn't have the options to go to these specialized schools that the organization sponsored. So now, about 3 or 4 years ago, it's been opened up to single sisters who wanted to offer themselves to go to the schools and to be sent wherever they're told to go because of, populations or how far away a place is.
Where was the school being held at?
They're held in different places all around the country. I'm familiar with one in Florida, in Palm Coast, Florida, but they are held in assembly halls and they are held in kingdom halls too, I believe. But definitely, I know for sure they're held in assembly halls and these specialized training schools that have been either purchased or built for that reason by the organization.
Okay. So you applied to go to this school?
I did apply to go to the school. I applied last year.
How long does it take to find out whether you're accepted?
So I applied about 3 months before I found out if I was accepted or not. And the way I found out I was accepted or not is at the circuit overseer visit. When the circuit overseer came to visit the congregation, at least at that time, that was when he looked over all these applications that were going out for certain things, and mine was one of them. And so it was about 3 months later that I found out what the status of that was.
And what did they say?
My application was denied. It didn't even get forwarded to the society or to the headquarters because I didn't have any active Bible studies at the time. So my application for the school was denied for not having Bible studies.
So you mean to tell me that basically the circuit overseer is the one that looks it over before they even send it to Bethel? So evidently there's a criteria that he has to measure prior to submitting it, and you didn't even meet the criteria.
Right, because a very, very important part of that, he explained to me, is having Bible studies, and not just having Bible studies, but being able to demonstrate the fact that you can start and continue Bible studies. And because I didn't have any and hadn't had any for months, then he looked at that as an incompetence, that I wouldn't be able to fulfill the requirements needed.
And at that time, how long had you been pioneering?
7 years.
So they didn't think that you going out in field service every month putting in 70 hours qualified you enough to even go to that school?
I think that that's exactly how they felt about it. I think, no, they didn't think it was. They didn't think it was enough because it wasn't producing any Bible studies. It wasn't producing anyone who was coming into the organization. And, the time I spent out there obviously was a little bit of a waste as far as that particular school was concerned.
Well, did they tell you that you can reapply at another time, or how did he leave that?
Yes, he did tell me try to work on getting some Bible studies, try to focus more on your return visits and cultivate them into Bible studies, not just return visits, and you can reapply in 6 months. That would be when he came back when another circuit overseer or he came back for a visit to the congregation again.
So that puts more stress and pressure on the person that's trying to attain or to, get involved in these extracurricular activities that the society has because it makes you feel special and important. But now you find out that you're not good enough for these schools that they have because you don't have enough studies. So how did you feel about that?
I was extremely disappointed. I was hurt because I had made a huge amount of changes and arrangements in my life to even be able to qualify. And I just didn't feel like I honestly didn't feel like that was the only reason. I felt like that was the reason he was telling me, but for some reason I just couldn't get out of my head this cannot be the only reason, because I had prayed about this so much, and this was a normal spiritual goal. This is something that people want to do. And I made so many arrangements and so many changes in my life to be drastic changes to be able to do that. And then it's not that it went up and then that like the application went up to society and then got denied. It's just the application didn't even get off the ground. It didn't even get sent anywhere other than my local congregation. And I was very, very hurt by that.
What type of things did you have to do to change your schedule to qualify?
In order to qualify, one big thing, I knew that I wouldn't be working for the 2 months, because when they give you the packet to apply, they let you know, money will be spent in your behalf, but you will not be able to work for 2 months. So in order for a single woman who, lives on her own to not work for 2 straight months, that meant that I needed to save some money. So I worked a few extra hours to be able to save some money. I put money aside. I did without a lot of things and a lot of little trips and stuff that I wanted to do. I decided, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to save this huge amount of money, or try to anyway, save this huge amount of money for when I'm not working for 2 months. And right after that, then you supposedly get your assignment shortly after. So that means you won't be working after that either until you get where you're going and hopefully find a job. So I had to make sure that I was working enough to save money. But another thing that I did was I moved out of my apartment that I was living in by myself. I moved in with a family of people that I knew very well, some friends in the congregation that I knew very well. They were willing to help me. I moved in with them to pay a lot less rent per month to be able to save money again. And, of course, I started to study different things outside of the normal things that we would study. I was trying to figure out about prophecies and just things that I needed to brush up on. So it changed my personal study. It changed my personal life. It changed my living arrangements. It changed what I did with my money. And it also changed the little other extracurricular activities that I would be doing. But instead I chose to.
Well, so you made some major sacrifices for that. That was some major sacrifices, yeah. And then here you're thinking that the only qualification that you have to do to get in there was to be able to regular pioneer, and then they tell you can't go because you don't have enough Bible studies or you don't have any Bible studies. So did anybody else in your congregation apply to go to the school?
No, not that I know of anyway.
After that happened, would you say that really shattered your foundation about the organization?
Oh, it did. It did, because of, like we said, all the sacrifices I had made. I just couldn't see why, just because I didn't have Bible studies, that I wouldn't be able to go. And so, like I said, I just don't feel like that. I just could not reconcile in my mind that was the only reason. There had to be something else. Now, I never figured out if there was anything else, but I just couldn't shake that feeling. And so, yes, it did. It did. I didn't feel like they were being honest with me, completely honest with me about the reason.
So what did you end up doing?
Not long after that, maybe in a matter of days, weeks, a friend of mine, a very close friend of mine who is not a witness, but someone I had gone to high school with that I kept in touch with over the years, very good friend, asked me a question because he does a lot of research into religions, and he usually likes to ask a person of that religion. He asked me, am I being held hostage? And immediately I was like, being held hostage? No, I'm not being held hostage. But he explained to me what he meant. He explained to me that he asked me, did I feel like it was possible that the Watchtower was holding Jehovah's Witnesses hostage? And so he sent me some information that he had been researching himself, looking into himself, that made me question the whole situation. It just made me question everything as far as this organization was concerned.
Why did he ask you if you felt like you were being held hostage? How did that even come up?
It came up because he had a dream. He had a dream that I was being held hostage by vampires. So he didn't actually ask me anything about vampires. He never mentioned that until well after I was awake, much later on down the road. But he said that in the dream, the vampires were the Jehovah's Witnesses. That's how it came up. And so when he called me and asked me if I was being held hostage by this religion, that's what he had in his mind, but he didn't say anything about vampires. But it came from a dream that he had. So the articles that he sent me mainly focused on the typical things, 1914, 607 BCE, and those things. And also another interesting thing that he sent me that I hadn't really thought about was information about the cross. And so he sent me this information, and I was open-minded enough to look into what it was that he had sent, because I knew that he wasn't someone who was sending me information to change my mind. He honestly wanted to know if I felt like if the accusations that were being made in these articles were correct, if the information was correct, and if this is what Jehovah's Witnesses really believed, or is this something somebody just wrote. So he sent me that information. I looked over it, and I started to see, well, yes, this is what we believe, and yes, this is what we believe. And the more I read through it, the more ridiculous it sounded. Like somebody from, just kind of thinking of it from his point of view, it just sounded so ridiculous. And then it led me to look into other things, like the way our donations are invested. It also made me look into the child molestation charges, because I started to discover those, how Watchtower buys and sells property, using the free labor of the friends to build and remodel properties and then to shortly thereafter sell it for these huge amounts of money. So it also prompted me to watch other videos like the Jason Zelda Hidden from Jehovah's Witness series, John Cedars, Critical Thinkers, Marcus Bond, and Watchtower Examination. The more I watched these and the more digging that I did, the more actual real research that I did, secular research, not research into the CD-ROM and with the Watchtower and Awake, but actual secular research, I found that the history that we had been taught and secular history didn't match up. So the dates that he found, this 1914, 607 BCE, of course we all know that what I found wasn't true, but I didn't know that until I actually did my own research.
So all of this going on the internet and doing your research transpired pretty much because, or you let your guard down pretty much because you were rejected by the organization, you feel?
I did feel rejected, and I felt frustrated, and I just could not accept that the lack of Bible studies was the only reason. I just couldn't accept that, and I was so frustrated after that I just kind of questioned a lot. And then, like I said, not long after that, he started sending me that information too. So it's interesting how, you were willing to now open up your eyes because you saw a crack in the foundation, something that didn't even make any sense, because all the time that you've been a Jehovah's Witness, they just been preaching to us to go out and do what? Go knocking on doors. It was never a special criteria that you had to have. Right.
And so now you look at this and I'm like, wait, what's going on? So do you think they were trying to make this like a real elitist group of people then?
I do. I feel almost like the only people who would qualify for this school is people who are already circuit overseers, or people who have been in the circuit work before, or people who, of course, brothers who are elders or sisters who are married to elders.
Well, they don't have. They don't have Bible. They don't have Bible studies. They don't necessarily have Bible studies if you're a circuit overseer. Because circuit overseers can't really have Bible studies because they don't. They're only with the congregation for a week.
Right. I understand that they don't have Bible studies, but there's something else that they've done. Somewhere along the way, they've proven themselves somehow. And I feel like it's only those who have proven themselves somehow in some other way who are going to be able to go to these schools. That's what I'm saying.
I'm just thinking that they want to raise the bar. Let's say there's 20 females coming from 5 different areas that apply to go to the school, and they're all told that they have to have Bible studies. Now it just raises the bar, and now it makes you want to go out into the territory and really work hard at getting these Bible studies so that you can get to this school. So now it's putting more pressure on you. It's putting you under the gun because now you realize I want to go to this school, but now in order to get there, I got to do more to get more Bible studies, because all that means is more Bible studies means more recruits.
Right.
But see, you didn't fall for the bait.
Mm-hmm.
See, that's all that was. You were like, wait a minute, what's going on here?
Yeah, that's true. I hadn't thought about it like that, but that is true too. It does definitely push you to do more.
Yeah, I was going to just say, and that's what they're about. That's really their tagline: do more. Mm-hmm. You know how Nike says just do it. Well, the Watchtower is do more. That's their tagline.
That's true. You know, hear it at every assembly and every convention. Can you do more? Yep. Mhm. So at that point, I was starting to wake up because I was frustrated, and I started doing this. I was starting to wake up at that point. So even though I would go to meetings and all, I just started doing my research. I wasn't doing anything else. I shut down after that.
How long has it been that you have learned the truth about the truth?
About 8 months.
About 8 months, okay. And when you first learned about it, you said you went to the Kingdom Hall, you still were going, but how long did it take you before you stopped going altogether?
I went ahead and continued to go for the rest of the service year. So the service year, of course, ended in August, the end of August. I went ahead and continued to go. Now, going and being there, of course, are two different things. Immediately, there are some things that I immediately stopped after I did a lot of research. I immediately stopped donating my money. I stopped commenting at meetings. I stopped trying to find people at home in field service. I immediately stopped all those things that were going to contribute to this craziness or that it was going to cause anyone else to come into this organization because of my doing. Mm-hmm. I immediately stopped all those things. But I did continue to go until the end of the service year. I went, but I was not there mentally. I was just there physically. Because the main reason for that is because I was living in a house with 2 other Jehovah's Witnesses. So I didn't want to ruffle the feathers, make any waves by not going.
So what did you end up doing?
I eventually did go ahead, and at the end of the service year, I told the field service group overseer, or the brother who's in charge of the group who meets at his house for field service before we go out on Saturdays. I told him I wanted to come off the Pioneer list and I was moving. And then I had already made the arrangements to move, so I did. I moved to a different area altogether, more than an hour away, and I've been here since for about 2 months.
Now, see, all of that moving to go to college for you when you first got out of high school and you said you moved about 2.5 hours away from your family had already prepared you for the move that you made a couple of months ago. So you see how that came back full circle to help you out?
Mm-hmm. I do, because that's one thing. I'm really good about starting over. I'm very good at just picking up and leaving. My life is so simple that I literally can just pick up and leave whenever I want.
It's good to be able to do that, because a lot of people just can't up and just pick up and move. There's a lot of people that's listening to this program right now that they probably would still be living in the house with the 2 people that they were living with because their circumstances might not allow them to do that. And there are people that I know right now that are still going to the Kingdom Hall years later after finding out that this is not the truth because they don't want to rock that boat with the family. And so you are very fortunate that you could get up and just make that move,
Right.
Now, there's some other things you had talked about that you had discovered after leaving the organization. And that's about the type of information that Jehovah's Witness families do not provide for their young daughters, and even their sons, you can pretty much say. What did you discover about that?
Mm-hmm. So what I feel like is that it may not be a universal thing, and it may not be with every family within Jehovah's Witnesses, but I have found that with many families in the organization, they do not prepare or properly prepare their young children to go out into the world. What I mean by that is that They don't have conversations with them early on, as far back as like puberty. They don't have open communication with them about what's happening with their bodies, the feelings that they're having, what kinds of things they're going to experience the next couple of years. So they skip that. They don't have open, honest communication about that. They don't talk to them about the natural things that they're going to be interested in: drugs, sex, alcohol, relationships. They don't talk to them about those kinds of things either. And so now you have someone who's gone through puberty pretty much by themselves trying to figure it out. Now you have where they're starting to get to the age where alcohol and drugs are available, but they know they can't really indulge in those things the way people around them do, but they can't really figure out why. And then there's the whole issue with sex and relationships. They've not had a conversation with their kids about how to talk to people, how to have open, honest communication. So you have a group of people who are thrown out into this world of all these things that they're going to experience, and they're not prepared for it. And I can just speak from my own personal experience that my mother didn't have conversations with me about any of those things, none of them. I don't remember a single sit-down conversation where she said, look, this is going to be happening to you soon, and I want to talk to you and let you know what to expect. Or I see that some of your friends are getting into this or that, and I want to prepare you in case you're interested in it too. Never. And so they send their children out into the world, and they don't exactly teach them how to handle things, but the organization is very quick to come down on them very hard if they get involved with some of these things. They want to be quick to discipline them somehow because they had a question about something, or maybe they have an interest in someone who isn't a witness. They want to be very hard on them about it, but they've not prepared them to deal with it the right way.
Right. Because all they do is say, oh, if they're not a Jehovah's Witness, or you're not allowed to do these things, but they don't explain to you what you're not allowed to do or why you're not allowed to do it. And then your body is making all these changes, and your body is like, I want to do these things. I want to get involved. You know, your body is like, hey, I'm all in this. I'm all ready for this, you know. But then the kids don't know how to handle it, and then they don't know how to deal with it. So, yeah, and it does take a lot for the parents to have that talk about the birds and the bees kind of thing, you know, with their children. Or they make it sound like it's dirty, you know.
Right.
It's terrible. So what do you think did you have to experience anything on your own without knowing? How did that work out for you?
I did have experiences where there were times that I did get caught up in some things or almost got caught up in some things. You know, there were times where I actually took the time to think, wait a minute, this is, but it's not because someone had talked to me. It's because I had learned to, of course, from school, I had learned to think for myself and say, wait a minute, this is probably the reason why this, that, and the third. And so although I didn't always have reasons right away that were firm in my mind, I just knew that some things I just wasn't going to do. I guess there were some things I just wasn't going to do. I didn't necessarily have any particular biblical reason. It's just some things I just wasn't going to do them. I wasn't going to be involved with them just because of the fact that I am thinking for myself now and that I had self-respect. And so that thankfully those two things were things that just kind of saved me from a lot of foolishness. But I do feel like that a lot of my relationships were sorely hindered, like very, very, very damaged because I didn't get the communication experience. I didn't get the communication experience where they taught me how to be open and honest about things, how to be tactful about things, how to say how you feel without offending someone or say exactly what you're thinking without hurting someone's feelings. I had to learn those things on my own, and I didn't always do such a good job of it when I was a young adult.
But to me, you sound like a person that had a good head on your shoulders because, you know, you still remain focused. And you have to remember that everyone that, you know, grows up in this world is not going to do everything 100% perfect because we are imperfect. We will make mistakes, you know. And I think that's the problem with the Jehovah's Witness religion is that we want everybody to be so pristine, and nobody can ever, you know, do those things to the upteenth degree where they don't have some flaws in their life, you know.
Right.
So you've done a pretty good job. Now, what's your life like now? Are you dating now?
My life is great now, and yes, I'm dating. I am dating someone who's great. And yeah, my life is good. My life is really good for several reasons. One is because I don't have to not do something just because someone said don't do it. I don't live my life anymore for what other people say. And now I've learned to really, really look deeply into things before I get involved with them. And I feel like that's so important. I've learned to research the origin of things, the history of things, and the current belief and practices of organizations. I've learned to do research before I get involved in anything. And that is so liberating to me because I have my own time. I can make decisions what I want to do with my time, where I want to go on Sundays, if I want to visit a church, if I want to stay home. I have that option now, and I don't have obligations, and I love that. And I feel like that's so important for young people.
If you had to go back and do it all over again, how would you have spent your time in college in terms of what you went to school for?
Oh, my goodness. Oh, if I had it to do over, there's a few things I would do the same. One thing in particular, I would definitely probably still, in my particular circumstance, I would probably still have done a 2-year degree because, again, I didn't want to start my adult life in debt. And my grants and scholarships, thankfully, were enough to pay for what I did for school. So I would definitely take that route again. But something that I maybe would do differently is that I would probably be a little more open-minded to doing other things in addition to that. And when I was 18, which is when I first started college, I probably would have taken the time to do some research into Jehovah's Witnesses too. Especially since I was in an environment that's what you do. You're in school, that's what you do all day, is you read and study up on things. I think like the little doubts and the little questions that I had at that time, instead of covering them over with, oh, well, they said it was right, so it must be right, I think I would have really done more research into those at that time. Would have saved me a lot.
And that's a hard one to say because when you're a Jehovah's Witness, you're told that you're not supposed to do that. So it's not uncommon that you would not have done that.
Right.
But for other people, you could probably talk to another 18-year-old now and let them know to do that. But, looking back, it would have been hard to even try to do that because they got you in your formidable years where you were already beginning to think and believe what they told you. So it was a little hard, for all of us that were raised in this religion as kids,
That's true. That's true. They keep you so busy with so many things. You just don't get a lot of time to really think, to just be like, well, does this make sense? Does this really sound right? You don't have that kind of time.
See, my thing is, too, if that little situation would not have happened where your application was not approved to go to the school for the Kingdom Evangelizers and your friend sent you that message talking about, were you being held captive or hostage, do you think that would have made a difference in how you responded to that?
I think it may have made a difference. I think it would have been the difference of being where I am now and still being where I was then. I really do, because if I had been accepted to the school, then again, I would be all about doing that. I would be all about, this 2 months and where am I going to go for an assignment? Where am I going to go after this 2 months training is over? Where am I going to be? I would be all about that. And it would be all right. Like it would be a situation that everything's going right. So why would I have any reason to question it? But because of the timing, because of, this particular day, I learned my application wasn't even accepted. And then days or weeks later, then this whole situation comes up with him asking me the question about being held hostage. Then, yes, I think that definitely, like the two of those things together is the mixture that kind of made me see that I needed to get out of there.
Does it make you afraid? Because weren't you going to get rid of your job?
I was, yes. I wasn't going to be able to work. So, yeah, I was going to have to look for another job somewhere else, but it would have had to been months later. It would have been months that I wouldn't have been working at all. So, in a sense, you not having any Bible studies kind of saved your life, figuratively speaking. It did. Yeah, it did. It did. And probably the lives of whoever I would have been studying with, too. But, yeah, that whole the whole set of circumstances, I believe, just made for me to open my eyes and see clearly this is not quite what it says it is.
Mhm. It's amazing how I talk to so many people that, they're like on the brink of doing more Watchtower stuff and giving up their life and their livelihood to finding out this is not the truth. And you are definitely an example of that. And it's very good to hear that you were able to pull back from all of that and get your life back and start to live for yourself and not for some organization. That's awesome. So I hope people that are listening to this program will understand that you need to get out there and do your research and find out what you're in, and if you're contemplating going to college, then that's something that you should do, especially if you're doing well in your schoolwork, What advice would you give to those listening to the program based on your overall experience with Jehovah's Witnesses and you waking up and everything?
Well, one thing I would say is to remember that there are always options. I think I said before that I liken this organization to being in an abusive domestic relationship where constantly you're being told that you're never going to find anything better than this anywhere else. No one's ever going to love you the way we love you. You're not going to be taken care of so well anywhere else. But you do need to know that there are always options. You just have to be open-minded. I think it's important to surround yourself with people. Like once you decide that which way you're going to go, it's important to surround yourself with people who have a similar background and who care about you enough to talk to you straight, adult to adult and tell you, well, this is what I found or this is what I did and this is the reason why. Because when you have people who around you who have had similar experiences and that care about you, then they're being honest. And when they're being honest with you, you know that they're not just making it up trying to lure you out of or into anything or trying to get you to do anything. They just are telling you their experience, and you can benefit a lot from those. The person that I'm dating now has a very, very, very similar background to mine. There's so many things that we have in common with this whole organization and everything. It's amazing what you can learn from someone that cares about you and is being honest, not just trying to lure you into or out of a situation. So I think that's really important. And for any of the listeners who have children, develop open communication with them. Take the time to tell them and explain to them things that maybe our parents didn't tell us. We know that we don't have perfect parents and you can't choose your parents. But I would suggest that if you have children, that you take the time to explain to them what is happening with their bodies, explain to them the feelings they're going to have, the situations they may encounter. It's so important to healthy adulthood. And it really does help them to reason on things and figure out why they won't be involved with things other than my mom and dad said, or this religion says, or Jehovah's Witnesses say. Because these are the decisions that you want them to make even if they aren't Jehovah's Witnesses. You want them to make good decisions even if they're not. So they can't use that as an excuse if they decide to pursue something else as far as religion goes. The last thing is just make sure that you really do your research. I know you've already said it, but I don't think it can be said enough. Make sure that you research anything and any organization that you're thinking of being in. Research it from the foundation, like the origin of it, up until what they teach and believe at this particular day. Like, I just feel like it cannot be stressed enough that you really have to research what you're getting involved in.
Right. Okay, well, that brings us to the end of our program, and I've really enjoyed having Demira on our show and telling her story. I think it's wonderful to hear how one more person has woken up and they see the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society for who they really are. And I'm just glad that you were here to tell your story, and we would, look forward to talking to you again.
Okay, thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome.
If you've been in the struggle and want to appear as a guest on our show, email us at exjwct@gmail.com.